Hey everyone! So today's video is going to be something a little bit interesting, a little bit different, but something I think that could be very useful to anybody wanting to enlarge a sketch or line drawing or perhaps calligraphy or something like that. So for example, what I am doing in this video is taking this piece of word art that I've done and I want to hang in my entryway on a much larger scale. So I'm taking it, scanning it, and turning it into a much larger template using tile printing, because most of us don't have a printer that prints on this scale. That's just not something most of us have or need every day. So I'm going to show you guys how to create something enlarged like this using just standard size paper, which is 8.5 by 11, and just your inkjet printer that most of us have at home. So then what you can do with that template is then use it to trace your good copy of your art into a large version of whatever it is that you want to reproduce in that large way. After all of my babbling, hopefully you guys understand what it is I'm going to show you, and I hope that it's useful to you guys. And if you do find it useful, please share this video with other people who might like it as well, because something like this is very specific. People might not think to search for something like this on YouTube, so if you find it useful, others might as well. So please share, like this video, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel for all the rest of my videos. So now let's get to the tutorial. So for this tutorial, I'm using Photoshop, but if you don't have Photoshop, you should be able to translate my directions into whatever imaging program you are using. So the first thing you want to do is scan your image, and you can import your image in Photoshop at the same time by just going to File and Import from Device, and then choosing your scanner or printer scanner from the list on the left hand side. And then you just want to go ahead and make sure that you have your scanning settings are similar to mine. So we want to scan our image in at a fairly high resolution because we're going to be resizing it a little bit larger, and we need that for that to translate properly. So I'm scanning it in at 1200 dpi, and I'm just scanning it at the default size that it has me at. But then I want to choose where I want this file to be saved. So I'm going to name my file, I'm going to save it where I'd like to have it saved, and then I'm going to press scan. You can also scan your image outside of Photoshop and then just open it up in Photoshop or whatever imaging program you're using alternately to this method. So once your image is imported into Photoshop or you've opened it in Photoshop, we're going to adjust the size. So here's the reason why scanning it at a high resolution is important. We want to resize this image to be quite a bit larger, and you want to resize your image to be the actual size you want your work to be. So my piece of work needs to fit into the frame I've chosen. So it's 18 by 24 inches. So I'm going to just type in 18. And since the number is around the same, it's slightly larger, which is fine. For the height, I'm going to leave it at that, and then I'm going to change the resolution to 300 dots per inch. You don't need it any larger than that. And in this case, it's not super important that you get a really great quality print, but since we are able to do it, we might as well. So 300 dots per inch for the resolution. So now the next step is to make our line art or our quote very, very dark, so that whenever we're tracing it later, we can see it through our paper. And this is especially important if you're using a thick watercolor paper like I'm using. So you just want to duplicate that background image, and you just want to delete that original background image since we don't need it. Then what I'm going to do is add a new layer. I'm going to put that behind our artwork layer, and I'm just going to fill that in by going to Edit, Fill, and choosing white as the fill color, and I'm going to press OK, and then our background is going to be white, so that when we resize our image, we're going to have a solid white background. But first, let's darken things up. So you just want to click on Image, and then Adjustments, and then down to the Posterize option, and On mine, the default setting is 4. Your settings might end up needing to be different than mine, so just go ahead and experiment with that if you need to. And now we're going to go to Image Adjustments and click on Equalize this time, and that is going to make your lines black. If you need to further darken your lines, you can then click on the Image tab and go to Adjustments once again and click on Levels, and then you'll see that you have some adjustments you can make, some little draggable triangle levels. So you can adjust your whites to be really, really bright, so that would be your white triangle, and then you can adjust your blacks to be much blacker by clicking and dragging the black triangle and dragging both of those towards the center. Mine looks fine with just the first couple adjustments I made, so I'm going to back up one step in my history. So now the next thing I want to do is just resize my actual line work so that it's a little bit smaller and I'll have a little bit more white space or negative space around the border. And then I will delete any markings or anything like that that I don't want. So then the next step, you'll just want to do some fine tuning, some fine adjusting to, I guess, whatever your subject matter is. Just fine tuning sizes of different elements that you have in your drawing or in your quote. So that's what I'm going to do using my lasso tool and my scale and rotate tools, just to make things a little bit more aesthetically pleasing and a little bit more balanced. And also guys, if you'd like to use my art that I have here, then I will leave a link to this document fully edited for you guys to download and print for yourselves if you would like to enlarge it and hang it on your walls as well. I don't mind that, so I will leave that on my blog, and I'll leave a link in the description for you guys to find that. Alright, so now that you've got your artwork to this point, we're going to start printing in tile. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to go File, Print to bring up your print menu, and then you want to go to Print Settings first of all, because you want to make sure that you have the correct size, which I'm using US letter, which is 8.5 by 11 paper, which is just standard size paper, and you want to make sure that you've got the correct type of paper selected for best results. So I'm just using regular bright white inkjet paper. So I'm just going to make sure that my settings are all correct here. And you also want to make sure that you're printing in grayscale so that you're not using colored ink, you're just going to use your black ink cartridge. And then just click save or OK or whatever the option is on your screen. So as you can see here, what's going to be printed is in this box here, and this is not where we want to start. This is in the center of the page, and we want to start on the very upper left corner. We do want it to be scaled to 100% because we want it to be actual size when we print it, but this is the option right here that we're going to be adjusting as we print. So we want to unclick on center because we do not want it centered. And then it gives us the option to then adjust our top and left settings. So we're going to put both of these to 0 for our first page, and that's going to line everything up so that we're printing from the very left top corner. And then you're just going to click print. You're going to get this message each time that says your image is larger than the paper, but that's fine. That's just because your image is larger than the paper. So just press proceed. Now to print your second page, you're just going to press file print once again, obviously. And then since we already did our print settings, we don't need to worry about that again. We're just going to go back down to our position adjustments, and we're going to leave it 0 for top because we do want to print top, but we want to print the next one in this row. So we're going to adjust our left printing position. So we want to move that over. So for myself, my next printing position on that left edge is going to be -7. And if you're using 8.5 by 11 paper as well, then it should be the same for you. So I'm going to go ahead and do -7. It's always minus to move over to the right, and then I'm going to press print and then proceed once again. So again, file, print, and we're going to do our third page. And for me, since I've already printed an entire row with just 2 pages, I'm going to move down to my next row of tiles that I want to print. So I'm just going to readjust my left setting to 0 so I can get back to my starting position, and then I'll be able to see where I need to position my top, and you want a little bit of overlap. I'm going to adjust the top setting to be -9, and that's going to give me a little bit of overlap on that W. And I'm going to leave my left setting to 0 because I want it to be right along the far left. So then I'm just going to press print, proceed, and I'm going to move on to my next tile in that row. So I'm going to leave the top setting at -9, and I'm going to adjust the left setting to move farther to the right. So I'm going to do -7, as you will remember from our top row. And for me, I get a little bit of an area where it's not going to print, but it's only tiny, and I don't want to use a whole sheet of paper just for that little tiny bit. So I'm just going to go ahead and print that, and then I'm going to move on to, for me, my very last row of tiles, and I'm going to do the same thing, adjusting my top and my left settings to print the next row of tiles. Now, if your image is larger or smaller than mine, you may have more or less pages to print and more or less rows and columns to make up your image. So now that I've got all of my tiles printed, I'm just going to take my first two, which is my top row, and I'll just position them just to show you how they will have a little bit of overlap. And that's exactly what we want. So before I start taping these together, I'm going to just cut off that little bit of white excess of a border that's around each sheet, so that when I position them together, that won't get in the way. It's just much easier to position them together if you don't have those borders on your pages. So now with borders removed, I can easily line up the overlap of my images. And then I'm just going to do that with the rest of my tiles, lining them up and taping them together to create my template for tracing. Alright, sorry my camera's zoomed in a little bit too much to get the whole thing, but you can see and you can tell here that my whole image has been lined up and taped together so that it forms my enlarged template. So now moving on to the next step, just want to take your template and tape it upside down to the back of the paper you're going to be tracing on. And I'm using a really good quality watercolor paper for mine because a hand-lettered watercolor look is what I'm going for. But you can choose whatever paper you like. So now, if you have one, you're going to need your light pad. If you don't have a light pad, you don't need one. You can tape your sheet up on your window and you'll be able to see your drawing or your lettering through that. But just be careful if you're using watercolor paints like I'm using, because they're watery, they can drip if your page is so vertical like that. If you are interested in this light pad, it's not very expensive. I will leave that link in the description of the video for you guys to check out. So then at this time, you're just going to use whatever medium you've chosen. I've chosen watercolor paints as I said, and I'm just going to use a small brush and I'm going to trace my lettering onto my sheet. So as you can see here, the light pad really helps make it super easy to see my work and to trace. If any of you watching are at all interested in this kind of calligraphy, I do have a basic video on how to do calligraphy the fake way, and I will have that video linked in the cards for you guys if you want to learn more about calligraphy and how to fake it. So now let's check out my finished piece. Alright everyone, that's it for this video. I hope that you guys did like it, and if you did, as I said, I hope you guys will share it with others, just so that people will find it more easily. That would help me out a lot, and obviously help them out a lot too. I hope you guys have a super awesome day, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye bye.